Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome, one and all, to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am your host here in safe, socialist New York City. Happy to be bringing you yet another episode of the world's longest running poker strategy podcast. A lot of great feedback from last week's episode featuring the one and only Derek Killingbird Tenbush, also known as the TPE head honcho and co-founder himself. We had our annual review of the WSOP schedule, maybe just a couple of weeks late due to scheduling conflicts, but still nice to run through the schedule with him and hope, beyond hope, that my friend will actually be able to join me this summer for at least part of what I like to call summer camp. I used to just say I'm going to Vegas for the WSOP, but let's keep it real, guys. The last several years, I haven't really played that many bracelet events. I think last year's schedule, maybe half the tournaments I played were at the Paris and Bally's, or what are they calling it now? The Horseshoe, whatever. And everything else, I was all over the place. You know, I went down to MGM Grand. I played a few tournaments at the Venetian, including my biggest cash of the summer, by the way. And obviously, you can usually find me at the Wynn if there's anything good going on there. So even though we did go through the recently released WSOP bracelet schedule for 2026, there's a great chance that when other schedules come out, I will be amending my flight plan, as it were. But it's always great to catch up with my good friend Derek and hear about his adventures. He recently became a grandfather, and he and his wife sold the house, and now they're on the road with the dog and just kind of touring the country and visiting family, just generally living the dream. For my part, I'm ready for spring. I'm excited that baseball season is starting soon. I'm excited to see the Venetian schedule, the Wynn schedule, the MGM Grand schedule, Aria, everywhere else around town, because this time of year is when I really start to gear up for the main event. And with that in mind, I actually have a hand from last year's World Series of Poker main event that we're going to discuss in a few minutes here. But I want to let you guys know that once March rolls around, that's when I really start getting serious about my prep. I'm going to the gym every day for the next 3 months. Well, maybe not every day, but at least 5 days a week for the next 3 months, getting my body, mind, and spirit aligned and ready for all of the anticipated ups and downs of tournament poker. I've also been studying like crazy using GTO Wizard, which is my favorite tool, by the way, for improving my poker game. Recently, I've just been obsessed with training mode, where I go through the different drills that are predetermined drills where they show you difficult spots or close spots, and you've got to figure out what the best strategy is for each. You can start to notice patterns in your game. Maybe I'm too passive in these situations, perhaps too aggressive in these other situations, and just really learn how to improve as a poker player. And with all that in mind, I've been working on my game by also playing a lot of poker, not only the live poker that I played out in California and Oregon on my recent trip out west, but also playing a lot of online poker, and I'm going to be doing more streaming. I haven't been neglecting you guys. Well, I have been neglecting you guys who follow me on Twitch, but that's about to change. I'm going to fire up the stream tonight, Friday, March 13th. I'm going to be playing some online poker on twitch.tv/ClaytonComic. And also I'm planning to play this Sunday. There's a $100 mystery bounty on WSOP Online. I'm going to make a special trip to New Jersey to play in that one. It's got a $150,000 guarantee and a gold WSOP circuit ring. So I'll be playing that this Sunday, the 15th of March. So follow me on twitch.tv/ClaytonComic and see how I do. So I'm going to be in New York for about the next month or so, and then I'm off to the West once again. I've got gigs coming up in places like Spokane, Washington, Richland, Washington, and Medford, Oregon. And then later in the month of April, I'll be down in my favorite place, Newport News, Virginia, at Kazi's Comedy Club. So you can check all my dates, ClaytonFletcher.com, and get tickets for my shows. But in between the Washington and the Oregon dates, I'm actually going to make a quick detour to Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and I'm visiting a place called the Caesars Republic, Lake Tahoe, for the very first time, because it's not that far from where some of these gigs are, and I want to play in some more circuit events. So I'm trying to win my first ever circuit ring. I'm planning to play in a $600 PLO event out there in Lake Tahoe, and maybe a $400 Monster Stack ring event as well. I have no idea how high the rake is on these things, but I imagine it's astronomical, but that's okay. I want to be ready to play live poker all summer long, and the only way to get ready is to get ready. So I'm trying to spend more time on the felt so that I'm not out of practice when I get to Vegas sometime around May 31st for the 7-week summer marathon. So just as my beloved Orioles are in spring training right now, I'm kind of doing spring training of my own, getting my body ready, getting my mind ready, and just practicing as much as I can so that I'm ready as I can possibly be for all of the challenges that I will face in just a few months. All right, so like I said, we will be doing a hand from last year's main event. Not a hand that I played, but a pretty interesting spot nonetheless. But before we do that, I want to review the hands from the last 2 weeks that we discussed here on the podcast using GTO Wizard, which again is my favorite tool. It's so easy to use, and you guys can get 24 hours free access plus 10% off your first purchase if you use my special affiliate link, which is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about an $1,100 satellite that I played to attempt to get into what I thought was going to be the monstrous LAPC main event, which ended up getting a total of 50 players. But I'm not talking about the satellite, guys. I'm talking about the main event itself got 50 players. So what a bust that was. Of course, I didn't know that at the time, but let's look at this hand again using GTO Wizard and see what the solver thinks about the way I played my hand. Just to remind you guys, the starting stack in this satellite was 25K, and we have run our stack up to 35K. The action folds to me in the small blind, and I've got the Jack of Diamonds, 9 of Hearts. The big blind has me covered, and she's going to slow play her pocket aces. So I limped in, and the big blind checked behind. So the blinds were 300 and 600. So we've got about 60 big blinds here and an M of 23. So it's very odd, obviously, that our opponent didn't see any reason to raise pre-flop. I guess she was really worried about losing me because when I limp in from the small blind, I will have a lot of garbage hands, but I probably would have limped called with Jack 9, but she didn't really give me that opportunity. I just limped and then she checked. So let's see how the wizard would have played Jack 9. Well, the wizard always limps in with Jack 9 and never slow plays pocket aces as my opponent did from the big blind. So she's already off the grid. Therefore, we won't be able to analyze her play for the remainder of the hand. We'll just focus on mine. With 1,800 in the pot, the flop came Jack of Clubs, 9 of Spades, Deuce of Clubs. So I've got top 2 pair. I went for the check raise. I checked, and my opponent bet 1,400. I raised her to 4,500, and she made the call. So the wizard mostly bets just one big blind, so 600 into 1,800. But it's a mixed strategy, and we do check 30% of the time. So I'll give myself a little check mark for checking here. And then when we check, we're actually supposed to slow play top two pair 40% of the time and check raise it only 30% of the time. So my play is approved, but it's not the highest frequency strategy. And this surprises me a bit. Like, are we really supposed to slow play top two pair on Jack 9 deuce with two clubs? So we've got so many straight draws, flush draws available, and we're just supposed to check call facing a large bet. Interesting. I guess we're supposed to make our hand look like we're drawing. And also we do obviously check raise much less frequently when it's a large bet. Like, this is like a 75% of the pot bet here. So it's understandable that we would like to slow play more often facing a larger bet than a smaller one. But still, I thought this was a home run check raise, but no, only 30%. Surprising to me. I wonder if it's also surprising to you. You can let me know on Twitter at Clayton Comic or in the TPE Discord, which is absolutely free. And there's a link for that. Just click the link in the description of this podcast. So now with 11,000 in the middle, the turn pairs the board, the deuce of hearts. So Jack 9 deuce deuce with two clubs. And I decided to continue betting. I bet 5K into 11K, about half the pot, and my opponent called. So my play here, after having check raised the flop, we actually are supposed to bet about half the pot 62% of the time. So a double check mark there, big pat on the back for me. So, and then villain called, and now with 21,000 in the middle, we just have 24,000 remaining in our stack, and the river comes the 5 of diamonds. So final board, Jack 9 deuce deuce 5, and we've got jacks and nines. I checked here, and villain shoved, and I called. The wizard loves my check, actually checking here 63% of the time. So check it out, guys. When we check raise on the flop and then bet on the turn, we're actually supposed to check this river, this innocuous 5 of diamonds, 63% of the time. And I think that what this is telling us is that villain will probably have a lot of missed draws, and we know we can't get value from those draws by betting because they're just going to fold. Everything missed, and when everything misses, very often we should check and give our opponent an opportunity to bluff at it, which is what I did. Now, what should we do when villain shoves? This was the tough spot for me. Should I have sniffed out that she had a big pair and that my jacks and nines were no good? Well, the solver always wants to call. So GTO Wizard is calling this shove 100% of the time. So even though I lost the pot, it looks like I played it pretty darn close to GTO perfection. Now, once again, guys, you can get your own copy of GTO Wizard to use at your leisure and analyze your own play. Once again, that link is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. Now, last week when I interviewed my good friend Derek Killingbird Tenbush, we went over a hand that he had played in a small stakes online tournament. I believe the buy-in was $6.60, a large field, part of a bigger series, and the blinds were 1,400 and 2,800, and Hero, Derek, has 90K, so just about 33 big blinds there. I don't know if you guys can hear my cat, Bert. He wants to be part of this conversation. The problem for Bert is that he is not old enough to play poker. Anyway, the action folds to KB in the small blind, which is kind of cool. We have 2 hands in a row where nobody enters the pot until the blinds. And we've got pocket queens, the 2 black queens, and Derek raised it up to 3 big blinds. And he was actually saying that he thought his sizing was a bit larger than he would have gone for normally. And that was because the villain in this hand, the big blind, was a very loose passive opponent. And so Derek thought going a little bit bigger than usual made sense. But I actually argued that I thought 3x was normal. It turns out, guys, the wizard actually raises to 3.5x. So even this sizing is a bit small, blind versus blind at this stack depth. So whereas Derek made it 8,400, the Wizard would have been closer to 10K. So not a huge difference there, but worth noting anyway, that when we are entering the pot first to act from the small blind, we want to go kind of big. Don't be afraid to size it up. Anyway, we did make it 8,400, so now with 19K in the middle, the flop comes Queen of Diamonds, 8 of Clubs, 7 of Clubs, Queen 8-7 with 2 clubs, and Derek flopped the nuts, top set, and decided to c-bet 5,600 into the 19,000 pot, which I immediately thought was on the small side, and Villain makes the call. So let's see what the Wizard thinks of this play. The Wizard actually prefers checking, probably because it's just so hard for our opponent to continue when we have 3 of the queens. But yes, 70% check, and we do make this play only 5% of the time. So betting a quarter pot here is the 5% play. We do bet much smaller, just 2,800 into 19,000 about 25% of the time. So in these blind versus blind spots, we're seeing that the solver likes to do very small sizing on the flop a lot. So anyway, we did bet 5,600 and got called. So now with 30K in the middle, the turn comes the King of Diamonds. So our board is now Queen 8-7 King with 2 clubs and 2 diamonds. And Derek continued with his aggression, betting 15,000 into 30,000, and Villain made the call. The Wizard actually wants to check 88% of the time on the turn after betting 2 big blinds on the flop. So we're supposed to pretend we don't like that king. I guess this is one way to protect our checking range. Like when we have a hand like Ace-10, we're going to want to bet kind of small on the flop and then check the turn a lot. So we've got to protect that range by sometimes having a monster hiding in our closet or whatever. Anyway, we do bet half the pot about 8% of the time, so we can't call this a blunder, just what we like to call in solver land a low frequency play that Derek made. And now with 60,000 in the middle, Derek's just got 62,000 remaining in his stack, and the river pairs the board with the 8 of spades on a board of Queen 8-7 King 8. And Derek checks, hoping to convince his opponent to fire. And fire he does, putting in 45,000 into this 60,000 pot. And Derek shoved. Villain folds. The Wizard always checks all combos of pocket queens that get to this point. So it's a 100% double check mark, pat on the back for my friend KB. And then, of course, we can shove and then feel like a genius, which Derek already knows he is. He's a stone cold legend of the game, and you can also follow him on twitch.tv/killingbird. All right, guys, as promised, it's time to go over a hand from the 2025 World Series of Poker main event. This time of year, I always like to study the previous year's main event. It helps me stay motivated and driven and focused on the ultimate prize, which is winning the No Limit Hold'em $10,000 buy-in championship event. So this comes from day one. In this hand, we are going to be playing the role of Thomas Worthman. We are a 55-year-old grinder, a bracelet winner from like 20 years ago. It's not our first rodeo. We've played the main event many times in the past and have had a few fairly deep runs, top 400 finishes twice. So the blinds are 200 and 400. This is early action. Remember, in this tournament, the levels are 2 hours long. And so right now it's 200, 400 with a 400 big blind ante. You start this tournament with 60,000 in chips. And in this hand, the action folds to the button, who is Michael Addamo. Now, for those who don't know Michael, he is actually one of my favorite players on the tour. He's a high roller. He is from one of my favorite cities, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. He's got almost $25 million in lifetime career earnings. But what I love about Michael Addamo is his fearless, always go for first place approach and his willingness to use non-standard bet sizings. I've actually seen Michael Addamo in high roller events on PokerGo or wherever betting 3 and 4 times the pot in spots where nobody else would ever do so. The guy is an absolute savage who's not afraid to take non-standard, non-solver approved lines, and that's one reason I love him. So anyway, he raises it up from the button, and I'm not going to tell you what his cards are until the end, but he makes it 1,000, so 2.5 big blinds, which I think this deep, 150 big blinds effective, as Michael has Thomas covered. Thomas with 55,000 is the effective stack here. Michael's got 65K. So he raises to 1,000. The small blind folds, and now you are Thomas Worthman in the big blind with your 55,000 in chips, and you've got the 9 of spades, 8 of spades. So 9-8 suited, and I think you can 3-bet this sometimes if you want to. Like, do we really want to go to war from out of position versus one of the best players in the world? I don't really know, but I guess the solver would probably say having this hand in your 3-betting range when you are playing deep is okay. I think I would have just called, and that's what Thomas Worthman chooses to do as well. So he puts in 600 more, and we're going to see a flop with 2,600 in the middle, and Hero with the 9 of spades, 8 of spades. The flop comes King of diamonds, Queen of clubs, 8 of hearts. So King, Queen, 8, rainbow, and Hero with bottom pair. We obviously want to check over to the razor in this spot, and then Michael thinks about it for a second and checks behind. So I don't know, maybe my pair of 8s is good. It's unclear, but Addamo opts not to bet the flop, which is a bit unusual, I think, regardless of Addamo's actual holding, which again I have yet to reveal. I think 2 big cards on the rainbow flop would normally indicate a high C-bet frequency from the pre-flop razor. I mean, we can have any 2 suited. We can have a hand like 5-3 suited, 6-4 suited. I mean, we can have totally whiffed this flop a lot. And so why wouldn't you C-bet here? Maybe just mixing up your play. Maybe you're slow playing a monster. I'm not really sure. But as Thomas Worthman, I would probably think, isn't that strange that Michael didn't bet this board, which seems to give him a range advantage. Anyway, the turn comes the 7 of hearts, putting 2 hearts on the board. King of diamonds, Queen of clubs, 8 of hearts, 7 of hearts. We have the 9 of spades, 8 of spades. So we've got 3rd pair now on this board, and we check it again, which I think is fine. You can maybe lead here after Addamo checks behind on the flop, but I think playing passively and defensively, just trying to get to showdown, is probably a good strategy as well. So we check, and Addamo goes half pot this time. He's not checking anymore. He's betting 1,300 into the 2,600 pot. If you want to fold your pair of 8s right now against Michael Addamo, I don't think you should play the main event. This guy is capable of all sorts of shenanigans, and it's just not okay to let him bully us and push us off of a pair with just a half pot bet here on the turn. We are playing deep, we've got chips, and we've got something to fight with. So I think we have to either call or possibly go for a check raise here. Maybe Addamo capped his range on the flop so we can represent a bigger hand. I don't know. There's no reason to get that fancy, I don't think, on day one of the main event. I think we can just make the call and see what develops on the river, which is what Thomas Worthman does. He calls this half pot bet, and now with 5,200 in the middle, we're going to the river, which is the 7 of clubs, pairing the board. The board is now King of diamonds, Queen of clubs, 8 of hearts, 7 of hearts, 7 of clubs. And we check, and now Addamo does what he's known for and overbets. He's betting 7,500 into the 5,200 pot. And now let's try to figure out what the heck is going on here In Thomas Worthman's shoes, we've got a pair of 8s. It's strange that this 7 of clubs doesn't complete anything and doesn't really feel like a good card for Addamo to be putting into his bluffing range. It's just strange that he's betting this river. So that raises the question, what are the chances that Addamo has a monster here? Like, does he really have a 7? Did he flop like 3 kings and he decided to check it one time and see if we would, take the bait on the turn? I mean, what makes sense and what does not? Well, one thing that doesn't make sense is for Addamo to play like a queen this way. He is making a very large, polarizing bet about 1.5 times the pot. So if he's bluffing, that bluff needs to work quite often. Like, let's look at this, guys. If there's, say there, just for the sake of making the math easy, say there's 100, you can call it 100K if you want, in the middle, and you decide to bluff at a pot that has 100K in it on the river, and you bet 50K. So a half pot bet only needs to work 1 time out of 3 to break even, because 2 times out of 3, we're going to lose 50,000 chips, and 1 time out of 3, we're going to win 100,000 chips. So that's a break-even situation. Now, if you bet 100,000 into 100,000, it needs to work 1 time out of 2. So you're going to add 100K to your stack or subtract 100K from your stack. Now, if you bet 200,000 as a bluff, your bluff needs to work 2 times out of 3 because you're putting in 200 to win 100. So if it works 2 times out of 3, you will win 100 twice and lose 200 once. So you can see that it would be somewhere in between half the time and 66% of the time. If Addamo's bluffing, that's how often this bluff would need to succeed. About 60-ish% of the time, which is a lot. So you've got to wonder, is he really bluffing here? And can I call with a pair of 8s? Like, is a pair of 8s good 60% of the time or no? So that's really the math behind this. And I don't blame Thomas Worthman for folding. I think that I would call just because I'm very familiar with Addamo and how many bluffs he's likely to have. He's more likely to have a bluff in this spot on day 1 of the main event than most of your opponents that you're used to playing against. And he might actually perceive us as like an old man that's going to be too weak tight. And so given that type of table image that Worthman has at this point in the tournament, I think he needs to call a bit more often. But that's easy for me to say, as I can see that Addamo actually has 6-4 offsuit. So he flopped nothing and checked behind, picked up a gutter ball on the turn and bet that 7, and then decided to, I guess, rep that 7 on the river. And Thomas Worthman bought it hook, line, and sinker, and the rich got richer. And that'll do it for this episode. Guys, do us a favor. Give us a follow on youtube.com/@ClaytonComic, where you can find video versions of all of our podcast episodes. There's a link in the description. I need you guys to subscribe to the channel, even if you know you're never going to watch it. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.